welcome back to another SuperCoach video with me, JD. You're joining me for the Round 11 review. It's a pretty big week. We're on the cusp of buys. New DPP is being revealed, and I've had a stinker. Let's cover all of that, as well as how we should be, approaching and trading through the buys in this video. Now, SuperCoach is just opening. It's kind of glitching and going through some weird things at the moment, but you can see my round rank and score at the moment. So 22.74, which is not a good score this week whatsoever. And after 5-6 weeks of going up, we knew a down had to come at some point. This big of a down, I'd rather it not have been. Lost, more than doubled my rank out to 325 now. But I mean, we're into the part of the year where the boys and the men are separated, really, which is the buys and how well is your team set up and ready to handle them. So, a lot to go through. Now, in terms of trades, so the trades I did this week were to get Laird and Humphrey in, and I traded out Cowan and Josh Kelly. Unfortunately, Josh Kelly and Oliver injuries in the same week really hurt, because Oliver I was happy to hold. Josh Kelly, there's no way I could. And I really wanted to get rid of Samson Ryan, and not being able to do that proved pretty painful, because he dropped a poor score on field, which I took over Humphrey, which we will see any minute once this decides to load. I guess everyone else has figured out that it's open and probably refreshing as well. So I took Samson Ryan's 39 on the field over Humphrey's, which was benched just because of the way my loopholes worked this week, which, it wasn't good. 61 points lost there. And then I know, especially in the Discord, getting Oliver to Sicily was a very popular move this week, which paid really big dividends from a scoring perspective. Come on, let's load now, please. So missing out on Sicily, I think, was the other really bad miss this week. Like Dawson, who's an antipod, scored well. Butters didn't kill me this week, which was nice for a change. Brayshaw had another good week. So there are a few guys I didn't have that scored well. But it was mainly, I think, Sicily was the one that really hurt. And then having Oliver, having that much money in your bench is never a good thing for your scoring. All right, while this is loading, hopefully sooner rather than later, if you followed me on Twitter on the weekend, you would have started to get a bit of a clue for some of the DPPs. So Walsh missed on forward DPP. Still going to be a relevant option as a midfielder, which we'll go through in a little bit. I've kind of got my rankings for everyone sits at the moment, but unfortunately misses the forward status, which would have made him an absolute lock. The other big one was Gawn, who was really close. He was sitting at 35% coming into the round and got just 34%. He ended up with 34.9% and missed out on DPP. And I'll tell you what, that is one of those season-defining moments if you're a Gawn holder, because I think there's some really nice trades where you could move him forward and get in a Briggs this week, and now you just can't do that. So for us non-owners, I think that's really fortunate and really quite lucky that he's not forcing his way into our forward lines. And then probably the only one that's actually relevant from a going forward perspective. Oh, come on, please load. This is so bad. I should have waited until it was properly fully opened. It's now gone back. So the only one that really matters is Jack McRae, who's a player I started, traded out, and now he's back up to about a 110 average, I think, after having put together a few really good games in the last couple of weeks. And he's, of course, got the forward status, so one that we'll talk about as to where he sits in the pecking order. Oh, wow, I'm hitting classic and I can't go through it. All right, well, then we might call a bit of an audible to not look at my team if this is going to keep playing up, which it is. And instead, we will go through... Oh, actually, let's just quickly look at some CBA. So this is Jack McRae here, 9%, 20%, 54%. I'm really unsure what they do with him going forward. The first kind of 8 games of the year, he did not score well in this kind of half-forward role. He scored really well with Treloar out of the side. Treloar should be back soon. Without having the injury list in front of me, I think he was getting quite close. And then I just wonder what they do with Jack McRae after that point. If he goes back to this few as CBAs, I just don't see the scoring being that good. And even at this point, it wasn't great. It doesn't make him a screen must-have, but I think he will be a good option. And if his course been really durable, which is nice compared to some of the other forward options that we have got. Last click. All right. Still not loading the side. So let's talk about then buy strategy and planning. So a few things we want to do. Firstly, we want to try and make sure we have at least 20 playing every week. That is absolute gold tick if you've got 20 playing every week. Yeah, for those that haven't played buys before, if this is your first time navigating buys, the way it works is you get the best 18 scores from your players on the field in a given week for the next 4 weeks. So if you have 20 players playing and you get a couple of poor scores, maybe you had like the equivalent of like an Atkins this week or a Samson Ryan like me, and they are your 19th and 20 players, they drop off from your total and you just get the best scoring 18. So having 1 or 2 extra players, so having 19 or 20 is really handy compared to those that just have the 18, because anyone that has got just 18 is taking all those poor rookie scores. Well, you might get the option to drop them off. So one of the things you want to try and do is get a balance where you are getting 19, 20 players each week, because it does give you a really nice boost during these weeks, and you can make up a lot of ground doing that. Now, the flip side of this is you don't want to do drastic trades to get up to 19 or even get from 17 to 18 that end up then destroying your team from that point going forward. So a lot of the time it is better to take a 0 than it is to get it in a poor rookie. For example, using a trade to get the equivalent of a Drury would not have been good during the buys, because you get a couple of 15, 20 point games, you get no cash generation, and you lost a trade. It would have been better just to, oh wow, it's really not working tonight. It would have been better just to not trade and take the donut whatsoever. So aim for 19 and 20, great, tick, perfect. But don't go destroying your team or doing really reckless stuff to get there, because it's just not worth it. And that's part of what we're going to have to navigate. Now, in addition, the last thing to kind of think about is that any premium that you're trading in this week is going to miss a game in the next 4 weeks. So, and while that's true of everyone, it is one of those things where we can start to look to arbitrage premiums where one has come off their buy and playing maybe next week, and then you trade out someone that still is yet to play, and you can kind of pick up a little bit of a points advantage doing that. And that's something we'll look to take advantage of. It's a little bit harder given that I'm running low on trades, but for those that still have 16, 17, 18 trades, you can actually be quite aggressive and make up points through the buy rounds that way as well. I think that's kind of the core premise of what we need to cover off. So if this isn't going to load, thankfully I did prepare something else for us to look at, which is good, and we can come back to this in 10. Oh, it finally did it. All right. We can come back to it in 10, 15 minutes. Now, okay, great. They've started to mark the blue dots as well. So the first thing you should be doing is putting your blue dot players onto the bench no matter what. And then working from there. Now, the beauty of these blue dot plays is they don't lock out until the game's over. So you have a perfect loophole in every round. You just use one of your blue dots, and you can always have a really nice loophole doing that. So yeah, as I mentioned, probably shouldn't start mucking this around until so you could see where the thing was. But yeah, Humphrey got benched, and I ended up taking a Ryan 39. So that's a pretty big 51 point loss there. I had Petrarca VC, and I thought he was a good shout with Oliver out, and he did do well, but just not, I actually Bont was one of those backup options. Merritt was one I was looking at as well. I was never really considering Dunks or Taranto. So look, 122 is fine. People that went Sicily and had that, absolutely amazing. You crushed it this week. Like, no other way around it. Okay, so as I said, we're kind of moving them on. Do I optimistically move Oliver on? That would be nice, wouldn't it? Probably not the C on Humphrey, despite him being very good. Why is it saying internal server error? Yeah, I think SuperCoach is having a lot of issues. So rather than trying to hit refresh and move the team around anymore, I might just talk through it because of the risk that we'll lose it, and then I'll talk through buy trading plans and premiums we should be targeting. So across the defense, I mean, Stewart, Dacos, absolute must-haves. I mean, yeah, Stewart, if you still don't have him, I think you trade him in this week, to be perfectly honest. And then Zeeble and Sheasel are the two interesting ones to talk about. Both had a down game, and Sheasel was already one I was planning to buy flip. Looked someone like Dawson, but I guess Zeeble's come into the conversation. He hasn't scored the best the last couple of weeks since the coaching reins have been handed over. 88 and a 71 these last 2 weeks. I mean, before that, he had, 5 tons, including the 180. But yeah, just a couple of little blips here, which does make you worry a little bit. Up against Essendon next, who have been all right to score against as a defender. So we'll just see what happens there. And then like this Bulldogs, one of the easiest matchups. Well, it was. It's not as true anymore. It's not like a Saints, but yeah, I think Zeeble, I'm a little bit more inclined to hold of the two at the moment, even though he's got the more cash on him. It's 100k price difference. Sheasel is the one that, yeah, I was interested in buy flipping just with him being moved forward of the ball. I think there's a very good chance he averages in like in the 80s from here on out. But I was hoping to hold him until he's buy rather than having to trade him, for example, this week. Which, I could do to someone like Dawson, but let's have a look at that later. Yeah, Weddle and Seamus, like those are the two of the loops I was playing around with, just to make sure I didn't cop a poor score. And it looked like it was going to be required because Seamus Mitchell was on like 20 or 30 until I want to say like that last quarter where he played well and got some good scoring. And I thought Weddle did some nice things as well. Now, interestingly for Mitchell, he was stuck on the bench for about the last 10 minutes of the game, so he could have gone even bigger. He had some type of like rolled ankle, knee tweak type thing that happened, and that's why he was held off. He was walking around fine after the game, but we haven't heard anything more about whether or not he's injured. That is a watch this week because it is a pretty big blow if we lost Mitchell, and for those that lost Sicily, that would be huge. Although I have a feeling Sicily challenges it. I don't know if he'll get off, but I think he challenges it. And I will also flag that I think we might lose Laird for a week as well, which makes this just so much harder. Yeah, so Weddle, Sicily, still good, still making money, should hold their spots, which is great. Don't love the matchup this week against Port, but hey, it is what it is. Constable is an interesting one, just because first, if you haven't seen Around the Grounds on DFS Australia, super handy. It looks into, yeah, basically for each of the twos leagues, what did players score that we, care about. And we can see here, Constable had another huge week, 127, although he's been doing that all year. And look, like Flanders and Ellis both had big games as well and could come in. But the reason why we talk about Constable is even though it feels like he's been nowhere near it, Atkins, oh, you can't see it. I haven't got this set up for this, sorry. Atkins was subbed off and didn't look particularly good. And Para was like not a great replacement either. So there is a very slim chance that Constable comes back. I wouldn't be banking on it though. I do think Sincotta's a little bit more promising. So let's firstly go to bring up the Carlton game, and then if we're looking at Around the Grounds, Sincotta here had a 115. He did have one really bad clanger that I saw that was put on highlights and kind of sent around, but I think there's a pretty good chance he gets back. So they had Newman injured, they had Hewitt injured, they had Hollands injured, and that's an AC jump that's proper out. I can't remember if Hewitt was his back. Did Monty concussions? He's at least out one. Newman's a hamstring, which I think is perfect for Sincotta to come in and play. Cripps got the ban. I don't remember what that was for. Limped off in Q4, and then Chera got a week suspension as well for a dangerous tackle. So they've got some others that are like obvious to come back in, like Fisher, who I think also scored well. Paddy Dow has been doing his. Lob is a Hollands replacement, so I could see Fisher or Lob in for Hollands, Dow in for Hewitt, and then I think there's a chance Sincotta comes back in for Newman, which would be a blessing for us because obviously we get another playing rookie here. So I think of these, I think it's much more likely that Sincotta gets a game than Constable, but you never know. All right, into the midfield. So yeah, like Petrarca, Bont, all good. Laird and Merritt have been the trade targets the last 2 weeks. Oh, and I think Oliver was the week before that. And so it's pretty annoying if we've got Oliver injured, Laird suspended, and Merritt's been going well, thankfully. But all of them scored well up until their unfortunate kind of events that we can't really predict. Not much I can do about that, to be honest. Just get lucky, I guess, get good. But Laird played really well, and it was weird not having to be scared of him scoring points for the first time this year. Did enjoy that. I've got Dawson in the other format, but I want him to join too because I honestly felt like he could have gone 140 this game, and I kind of got lucky that he didn't really absolutely destroy me. And then, but yeah, so for those who didn't see it, he kind of did like a slingish type tackle where Neil's head hit the ground afterwards. He did have an arm free. It looks like lead cushioned him a little bit, but honestly, I think we've seen tackles like that. Like even Amira this week got 1 week for something similar. So I think there's a pretty good chance we missed lead. Plan accordingly. Merritt, the 110. So he didn't really get tagged by O'Neill despite him being the late in, but apparently he got his hamstring corked by Nankervis last week and played through it being sore this week, which maybe is why he underperformed a little bit, but a 110, won't complain about that. And then North matchup this week, which should be pretty good. Again, I guess a little bit more nervous about having him as a captain if he's got that hammy lingering, of course. Probably does put him at slightly higher injury risk as well, just quietly. But the Port boys, Rosie and Butters, were both good. Actually, despite Rosie scoring higher, I thought Butters was probably the better of the two again today, although they both did great things. Like, there's no knock on either. They've got a nice matchup against Hawks this week at home. So, yeah, maybe Butters is a VC option. I think that's probably reasonable. Have we really got Melbourne Carlton on Friday night? That's going to be good. Okay, and then GWS. So yeah, Green and Cogs with Kelly out. We thought they'd go well, and have a feeling they had like pretty good DT scores. It's just the SuperCoach didn't translate across. But yeah, like especially in a game they won. Interesting, right? But against Richmond this week, I actually think like they're potentially captain options. But I mean, so's Taranto in that game as well, which is kind of interesting, who's been phenomenal. Will Day, touch on quickly. So I thought he played pretty good, to be honest, but he had like 6 clangers early, which really hurt his scoring. I still like him, but I can see people getting itchy trigger finger and wanting to move him on. I think if you've got the cash, you probably can during the buys. Especially if you, for whatever reason, don't have Stewart and you still don't have Stewart and then you want to flip him on, but we'll go into that a little bit more. And then Humphrey, traded him in, and I guess a little bit fortunate that I did, because paying up for rookies this much shouldn't really work. But I just thought job security, he's got the good buy. I don't think their fixture's particularly good, but he'd already played Brisbane and scored well on them, so it kind of alleviated a little bit. And then to play against a tough midfield like the Dogs and win was really nice as well. Scoring was a little bit fortunate. I mean, he was more on track for like a 60, 65, and then kicked the game sealing goal at the end, and that spiked him up to a 90. Still feels like, low 70s is probably more what I expect, to a mid 70s, rather than what we've seen in the last 3 weeks, which is huge. But yeah, I mean, Crom this week's going to be tough. They're in good form. But then I think those games after his bye, Carlton and Hawks could score well on both, even though Carlton does suck up points a fair bit. But yeah, pretty nice to have. At 350 is too expensive to get now for sure for anyone that is like on the outside looking in. Oliver, I just hope he's back this week. Johnson was really good. He should hold his spot, especially with Amira out a week. Like, his spot should be solid. I do worry they bring in someone like Brody though for the week, which then hurts Johnson a little bit. Interestingly, by the way, Wagner was one of the people that scored really well, but I don't think he comes back in this week, Corey Wagner. But yeah, I mean, Brody for Amira would make sense. And actually, just quickly touching on that game, Fife looked really good for the first half and then completely faded away. He is somewhat interesting option post buy. I haven't seen his price. I assume it's 260. 244. Wow. Yeah, it's so cheap. He's like somewhat interesting at this price next week. After his buy. It hasn't got his break even updated. This is still broken. Hopefully the price is right then. Oh, there's no break even because he's on buy, I'm guessing. Yeah, okay. Then it's 27 the week after. So yeah, he's getting mid-time now. Let's have a look exactly what the CBA count was. And also would be someone that would benefit from a mirror out of the side, depending on who gets named, especially if it's not Brody. Like if Fife and Johnson just say a CBA. So it's 42, 46% building up to it. Looked better as a mid. He just ran out of gas. So to have the week break now after getting a bit of match fitness, I think bodes well for him, and one that you could take a punt on at 244k after his bye. And then Sharp, look, I'm not sure who he'd come in for. I will. There's some talk about Zorko getting a suspension for eye gouging Pedlar. On the clip that I saw, it didn't really look like he eye gouged him. Looked like he was doing dumb stuff, but I don't know if it was suspendable for a week, which is unfortunate because I want Sharp back, especially after we missed out on like Humper's first price rise for him. So yeah, I mean, if Zorko missed out, that'd be handy. But as we saw, Lions and Dev Robertson scored really well on twos as well, so they could reasonably come in for Zorko. The only other thing I'll say is that like Wilmot hasn't looked particularly good on the wing. I think Sharp's personally looked much better there, to be perfectly honest. So I'm not sure McKenna's been amazing as a defender. So if they really want to play Wilmot, I could see them maybe moving on. Oh, like not moving on, but giving McKenna a go on the twos, moving Wilmot to half back and bringing Sharp in. Or I could potentially see them dropping Wilmot for Sharp. People are going to ask if they can move on Ashcroft. I don't know what his break even now is, but I assume, yes, you can move him on if you want to. It's 109. I mean, yeah, he could come back and play games at the Gabba and reasonably be okay. I think their fixture's not too bad. Hawks first came back, it's at the G, but it's like most weeks with Ashcroft. If it's your best option, do it, especially if you need plays this week. But if you can hold him, I think he's like a fine hold too. In the rucks, so yeah, English and Marshall just so. The big news here was Darcy's injury, who will of course be a trade, and that goes alongside Gawn not getting DPP. So the option that popped up this week, which I think is really nice if you want to go someone cheap, is Briggs, 254k GWS ruck. He's now gone back-to-back tons in quite nice form. Richmond, North, Freo next 3. The Freo game, I presume, will be without Darcy, which is nice. I mean, not that Jackson's a terrible ruck. Richmond's got Nank back, and then North's been playing Goldie, so it's like not the easiest matchups in the world, but yeah, he could make a fair bit of cash. I think the problem is if you don't have Darcy, right? He doesn't have any DPP status, so I could bring him in for Ryan, for example, and I'd get Briggs score next week. Sorry, for this week for the bye, but then after that he's benched while English and Marshall play, and I can't get Briggs score any other week. So is it worth bringing him in for a few price rises and flipping him at his last buy? I struggle to see it just because I'm running out of trades. So I'm probably not in the camp of if you don't have Darcy doing that. But yeah, if you've got Darcy, I think you can definitely move him down to Briggs, play that cash game. If you don't want to do that, we'll talk about who I've got rated as the best rucks. But I think English, Marshall, and Wits all make sense if you just want to go straight up to a top liner. And then, yeah, forwards, I mean, Dunkley and Taranto were huge. Goulden was tagged, I want to say, in this game. I feel like every game that he scores poorly, I just say he's tagged, and I don't know if it's true or not. But yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly fine with how he's going. Cogs, disappointing. He was scoring well and faded away in the second half, which it's been like a common theme for him this year. Ryan, this is really disappointing. Lost a fair bit of cash, 15k. Oh, it's annoying. His break even so large. Like, it would have been nice to handle through the buys, but it felt like even Ben Miller was getting second ruck time more than him, and he obviously got subbed as well. So Ryan, I'm going to have to move on, which is unfortunate. Davey didn't get a game. Like, Waller didn't look particularly good, so I don't know. There's a chance that, like, Davey could still get a spot there, but yeah. I think he's just, no good for now. He's finished. Let's move Humphrey into there, and then we'll just put Oliver into here just in case for whatever reason he comes back. All right. That's about where we're at the moment. So how many playing have I got? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Thank you for listening to me count. So I've got 18, but that could go down to 17 with Laird out. It could go up with Sincotta and potentially Davey playing. And Constable as well. Tough spot to be in. So in terms of trades this week, I think Ryan's probably out just because I can't afford to lose the cash, even though I do need the points. And Eddie Ford is the one that looks like the big trade-in target this week. He had, 100 last week, followed up with an 83 this week. It looks good. Against Essendon this week, wingers and kind of outside types have been able to score well, even though he's been like playing probably more forward up the ground a bit. But There's a chance he scores all right. Now, the other thing for me to look at this week is like, what are the bad rookies I've got playing? And so, I mean, I've got a fair few, like Weddle, Sincotta, Ford, Mitchell, Humphrey. Who am I really worried about? It's probably just Ford. So I would love to have an extra player that I could, like being up to 19 would be huge. So if, yeah, like Sincotta or Constable or Davey were back, then I could just take one of those bad scores would be really nice. Or if Oliver would back, that'd be absolute prime. Okay, so let's jump into how I've got all the players rated, as well as kind of some trade ideas for the buys, and then we'll finish off with captain, vice captain. Oh yeah, I could trade to Dawson, right? If Mitchell's out, could I get Dawson money? What did Dawson get to? Don't break my heart. No, I can't do it. 10k short. Rough. Okay. Okay, so here we go. This is something I just quickly whipped up. So bear with me. For each line, I've got kind of like a tier rating for like where I see them from, here to the end of the year. So how good they are. And then we've kind of got like by color coding here. So, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then on the right hand side here, we've kind of got some like trade ideas by round if you're looking for some inspiration, and this is not exhaustive. It's kind of just illustrative of what you can do or some targets you might make. The thing I haven't overlaid on this is, of course, value. So I wouldn't just get your favorite player from the tier. I'd be looking at who is value from the tier, who fits your buy structure, and then trading those in. But let's quickly go through it. So defenders, I have Dacos, Dawson, Stewart, and Sicily is the four that you want to own at the moment. I've been converted on LeBron. Went against him for too long last year, and it looks like he has got that role back. So, yeah, fortunate for non-owners that he's missing a week, but I think he's probably someone that you want to own. And same thing, it's like nice that Dawson's gone down a little bit in price. Actually, what's his break even? But I think he's someone that you want to pick up. So 593, 130 break even. I can probably wait until after his buy. Sicily is 6-8 with a 45 break even. I think the tough thing with Sicily is like I just don't know when I'm going to be able to afford him now. Like he's going to be out of range. So yes, like owners, I think owners are probably still fine because you got the 170, which is kind of makes up for points that you'll lose this week. But he rose enough in cash that non-owners either have to pay up, which is a pretty big deal this time of the year, or just miss out, which is also a big deal. In the next tier, I've got Doherty and Zeeble. So I think we've seen Doherty turn a corner for sure, and Zeeble's been good scoring outside the last couple of weeks. They're both older guys with injury risk and also got the last buy. So if you don't end up with these in your side, I don't think it's a big deal. And the next tier down, I've kind of got the guys which I think average about 100, maybe low 100, and like fairly confident that'll happen, which is Ryan, Sinclair, Lloyd. They've all got that first buy, so you could target one of those off it. But I think ideally you have, these six. But if you're missing one of these six and have a tier 3 guy, that's fine. The last tier is the risk on tier. So these are guys that are high risk, high reward type plays. But they also can form the list of like who you could potentially buy, flip, or trade out if you had them in your side and were looking to move them on and it was useful. So, like Day is someone I think you can move on. Cheezel is someone I think you can move on. In terms of guys, maybe more to like target. Redmond was one that I've talked about a little bit in Essendon wins. He does well. It's been talked about a fair bit that Essendon's fixture is pretty nice in the run home. And he, of course, showed what he can do in wins with a huge score on the weekend. He's now back to just above his starting price. Low break even, 55. Makes him a little bit tricky because it's kind of like someone you have to buy now. Obviously went huge on North last year. But yeah, I mean, the last 3 weeks, he's found some good form, old Mason. So, as I said, these are high-risk plays. Dale without JJ put up a good score on the weekend. I think that could continue as well. Darcy Moore, I didn't actually see if he put up a good score today. Did not look. I saw he doing some nice things early, and that was about it. Put up another 93. So he's got a huge 5-week average of 115. So yeah, these are the types of guys, if you're looking for a riskier play, you can go there. Or potentially someone that's cheaper from this pile, and not all of them are cheap. And then in terms of like players to buy flip, I mean, I think Day and Cheezel are the commonly owned ones. You could also probably throw Zeeble in here. Targeting Dawson, Sicily after their bye makes sense. Sicily may be too expensive if you don't go in like round 13, just because you got another price rise. And then, yeah, like Sinclair's probably my pick of these ones still. But I can understand if you prefer Ryan. I actually don't feel comfortable with Lloyd being in here, to be honest. He feels more like a risky play to me. And then I think Doherty is the one of these kind of like top 6 that has a pretty good price this week still. 557k, low break even 62. Of course, Melbourne are not a great matchup for defenders. That's your only concern there. But although like Doherty has been playing more mid, he's got good track record against them, etc., etc. But I think if you're round 15 by allowed it, Doherty is one you could target this year. Also, a nice little pod. In the midfielders here, it's a little bit tougher, but I mean, I think Bont and Oliver, when he comes back, are the clear top 2 for me at the moment. Laird is probably above Petrarca. Like, you could have another tier which has the Laird tier, but I think it looks like he's over his injuries. He's not being rested, and a week's break will help that as well. So I think I've got him up there. And then Petrarca, I still really like as an option. That may be a bit of confirmation bias just because I own him. I think the difficulty with someone like Petrarca is shares that terrible buy with so many others, and he's also like really expensive. So I just don't see him as being a great target, even though I've got him still rated quite highly. And then this next tier, I think you probably want... So I would say you're probably aiming for 3 of the top 2 tiers, and then probably 4 of the next tier, and then 1 from anything below that. And that probably makes up your ideal 8 from here, or realistic ideal 8 from here. So in that third tier, I've got Sarong and Brayshaw that both look good on the back of Fremantle kind of coming back together. And then Neil, I was originally going to have a little bit lower, but breaking the tag and with what he scored today, I think it's probably okay to say he's back. So I think you could target any of those after their bye. You're starting to look at value though. So Neil is 577k now. What's his break even afterwards? 100. So yeah, he's going to be a nice price. I think Brayshaw's 580, so he's also a good price. So both these guys you could realistically target off the buy. And then Sarong's probably the one that's still a little bit more expensive, right? 610. So yeah, I mean, it's in here, but like, yeah, I like all those as options. You could look at someone like a Steele as well, but he's been pretty up and down. And if he'd had another good game this week, I'd be much more confident on him. But the fact he went down even further, I just think it's probably not. He's got a 138 break even when he comes back. So to be honest, I wouldn't even be targeting him in this week. It's probably more like round 14 with Meals over here, where with these types, I'm looking for them to bottom out in price, see a good score, show that they're over their injuries post-bye in a round 13 game, and then you can try and pick them up really cheap here to finish off your side as kind of like an M8 type. For those that have Anderson and Rao, I'm still in favor of keeping them just because the buys are really nice. I probably don't see them as exactly top 8. Yep. And then, I mean, like, yeah, this is just guys returning from injury. Some of them have bad buys. I probably wouldn't be stuffing around with this. Mills is the only one that I think is like enough value at the moment that it like presents as a realistic option. In the rucks, I still have English as the number 1 ruck from here. So if you have Darcy injured and you aren't on English, I think that is a perfectly fine option, just given that anyone you trade to will have the buy from here. 592k, like this is a pretty good price compared to what some others have paid for him. So I think, you can reasonably jump on that. What did Darcy end up getting to kind of price-wise? Oh, it's really not that much of a jump either. It's only about 30k. So I think you could do that. But look, Wits is a little bit more interesting just because it helps your bye week for sure. He's more expensive than English. Wow. And Marshall's the most expensive of the 3. That's nuts. So Wits has been good these last few weeks, kind of since returning to injury. You can see here lots of tons: 115, 124, 118, 135. Probably no real reason to believe that doesn't keep up. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a few tougher ruck matchups still to come. Like Carlton have been somewhat restrictive. Pitney has been. Meek and Reeves have been somewhat restrictive from the Hawks perspective. So look, there's a couple where he may not score as well, but he just faced English and Big O and, managed to score well. He had I don't know if Gorn was back then, but like, yeah, he's been scoring well against good matchups as well. So I think Wits is a really good option if you both want to pod away from English, and you know, it works for your buy. So I think that's a nice one as well. And then most people have Marshalls, probably not even worth talking about. In terms of riskier plays, look, I think you could look at someone like a DCAM if you wanted to, Nank, but the Nank's got the bad buy. And like, would you really go over English? I haven't looked at the price. I don't think the price is enough of a difference that you would do that point of difference. 40k, probably not. All right, and then into the forward. So I've got Taranto, Dunkley, and Butters is probably the clear top three for now. Butters is probably the biggest injury risk. All of them have some patch of concern of history, but I think the difficulty with these is all of them are just priced so expensive now. They're all in the 600s. I mean, Dunkley 650, Butters is most expensive at 650, and Taranto 610. So if you don't have them, you're probably going to be missing out on one of these at least from here. Like, I really want Butters. I just don't think I can get to him. It's the bad buy, and he costs too much, so probably going to be a pass. From this next tier, so McRae is the one that's shot up more into consideration with his last few weeks, but you know, as we were kind of looking at before, these last 3 weeks that he scored, you know, 145s and this 81, it's all coincided with Treloar out. So does this hold? Does he keep this scoring pattern up? It's a really hard one, because if he does and you didn't jump on him at 574k, you've missed the boat big time. If he doesn't and you pick him up for 575k, you're probably a little bit disappointed with the pick. Plus, it's the bad buy. I mean, all the forwards the bad buy, which is the hard part. But yeah, Rosie, Goulden, and Zeeble make up this tier. I think these are all great options. Most teams, I think, will end up with 4 to 5 of these, and then you're probably looking at a couple from the bottom tier, whether it's like Cogs, Cameron, Sheasel. I think they'll end up being popular. Baslenka is a little bit more out there, but I think he's a realistically a good option given he's getting CBA time and the time on ground is improving. And then some risky options here. I mean, they're more of the key forward types in the forward line. They always end up tending to be the higher risk, higher reward ones. Bolton and Green are pretty hard to go just because of the buys, but Cameron and Hawkins I could see people considering, especially if we get word that some of their top dogs are going to return. I think it gives them a little bit of boost to scoring. So for me, ones that I haven't got, but I'm targeting. So I haven't got Dawson and Sicily. I definitely want Dawson. I'm not sure I can get Sicily just because of the price. It falls into the Butters category for me, where I'd love to get him. I just don't know if I can because of the price. We'll see. And then in the mids, I'm not really sure. It's probably Neil because of the price tag now. Maybe Brayshaw that I actually go, which I wasn't really considering. That would leave me with Bont, Oliver, Laird, Petrarca, Green, Brayshaw, Neil, Merritt. I think that's a pretty strong 6. It just depends whether I can get the cash to get them and what happens with like Mills, like how close is he returning to injury, because he's just going to be at such a cheap price point that it's going to really help if I can't finish a team from there. Okay, in terms of captain, vice captain this week, haven't looked at it massively. Like Cats don't have any mids, so that's kind of interesting, even though they've been good so far. And Bont's Bont. They like Petrarca with no Oliver. The problem is both these are tough matchups. Who else we got? Oh, yeah, I mean, like Stewart, I guess, is in good form. What's his history like against the Dogs? No, probably not. One of those concussion game, I think. Not good enough. Oh, wait, was it? Was that the game he hit Waitman? I think it was Waitman. No. Dacos against West Coast. That could be a vice captain option. It's actually a little bit harder than what I thought it was going to be this week. Like Laird against Gold Coast. Gold Coast's been in good form. Do I actually want to go there? I'm not sure. But I mean, if I brought this guy in, should I trust him? Maybe. Track record against him isn't great. And it's up in the dewy conditions. Taranto against his old side. I mean, this seems like it should be a captain option. Bit of a revenge game. He knows Giant Stadium, you know. Welcome back. He'll hear all like 13 people there boo him. And then you've got like Merritt against North, but I just, yeah, a little bit worried with the corked hammy. Do I want to go there? North is easy for mids to score on, and he's got good track record against them. Maybe I just put it there for now. And the beauty is, like, you can actually go Taranto into a merit, just once again because of those blue dots. Like, I can throw it onto Dunkley at any time, so I could go last 2 games. Always a little bit nerve-wracking waiting for the last couple of games. If you've got Butters, I probably like him as a vice captain option against the Hawks. I think that's really, really reasonable. Dacos against West Coast, I'll put a little bit more consideration into. And then I think that's about it for everyone that I like it. So, covered a fair bit. I guess the only thing I haven't talked about too much more is like trade in targets outside of like Ford and Briggs and like Fife next week. There really isn't a ton, to be honest. It's going to come down to what happens with rookies this week. We're going to be praying for guys like Sincotta, Constable, etc. to come back so we can get some warm bodies. Maybe someone like Ned Long comes back, who I believe is on the bubble, but yeah, it's pretty dire. The one that people are going to be asking about is Wardlaw, who's someone early on, I believe. But yeah, he scored just the 43 after 85 last week. Just couldn't run out the game. Started off well and faded. I think it's part of having a limited preseason and being built up with the conditioning. He could bounce back and score well from here. It just seems like it's a pretty hard buy at 194k. If he was a 123k with his talent, of course, we'd probably take that risk, but 70k down is a little bit trickier. Let's have a look for some break evens. So Ford's up there with the best. Briggs, I mean, this is why people are talking about Briggs, because maybe even if you only play him for 1 game, you might want to just jump on him for cash. So this is 68, 76, and 82 projected, and it's got him making 60, 30, 102k by his buy, and then you could just flip him out there. So it might be one of the better cash generators. I just don't know if I want to take that risk. But once again, if you've got Darcy injury, I think Briggs is an absolute blessing. Ned Long we talked about. So, I mean, he's one that if he comes back, you could look that way. I just don't know who comes out of the Hawks side, given they just won. Okay, no injuries come to mind either. And then, even if guys like Fleeton come back, do you really want to go them? Like, bad buy, poor job security. Ocean Mullen is probably one quickly worth touching on. So Irish debutant, for those that are unaware of his background, he was like a talent the level of Dustin Martin for Gaelic football, but decided to come and play AFL. Chris Scott talked him up and said, despite only playing like 3 VFL games, he could have played for them like 3 weeks ago type thing after his first couple or whatever it was. So pretty high raps. The concern here is whether or not he holds his spot with all the injuries they've got to come back. Like, they had another one with the Savarada out, but yeah, they've got a lot to come back. So I just worry with someone like him, whether actually holds his spot. Wouldn't be going on him early. I'd be waiting until after the Cats bye, and if we can pick him up then going for it. And then the other one, which was like McAndrew, which he's got to be in here somewhere, right? Oh, he's not even a 0 buy. So this is the other one people were kind of hoping for, Lachlan McAndrew, who's on buy now, so you probably shouldn't trade him in anyway. Or maybe that's why he's not showing up for there, because he's on buy. What's his break even the week after? 24? That feels wrong. Might be lower than that. But yeah, he wasn't good. He scored just the 23. So I don't think he plays after his bye, which is unfortunate, because if he'd absolutely gone lights out ballistic, then he's the type of player I could have traded Samson Ryan down to. But yeah, that's just unfortunate. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. I've talked about trade targets, players that I like, kind of philosophy for this week, some vice captain captains. But as always, if I missed anything, please hit me up in the comments below. I try and get to all of them at least in the first few days before the round. Hope you scored better than I did this week, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.